Good morning. Welcome to This Week. The fallout.
I got the ambassador on the other end, and he said, Greg, we're under attack.
New hearings and new revelations on Benghazi. Is it a political cover-up?
The White House has done everything possible to block access.
Or politics as usual?
Republicans have chosen to politicize this.
Will it hurt the president or Hillary Clinton? We'll ask our headliners, Senators John McCain and Jack Reed. Plus,
I don't make decisions based on perceived.
Obama's red line on Syria.
This is a hell of a lot more important to me than running for president.
Chris Christie's surprise.
Jump up on in there.
And on this Mother's Day,
Okay, you all set?
top moms in Congress in our Sunday Spotlight.
We have a women's bathroom right off of the floor. First time in 200 years.
From ABC News, This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Reporting from the Museum in Washington, Martha Raddatz.
Hello again. George is off today. Great to have you with us. The political storm over Benghazi is brewing anew this morning. The Obama administration on the defensive after ABC News obtained emails showing extensive edits to the disputed talking points issued after the attack. When one version suggested al-Qaeda affiliates took part and the CIA warned of threats, Secretary Clinton's spokesperson objected, writing that could be abused by members of Congress to beat up the State Department for not paying attention to warnings. So why would we want to feed that? Friday, my colleague, Chief White House Correspondent John Karl, who exclusively obtained the emails, questioned White House spokesperson Jay Carney.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
The CIA original version included references to al-Qaeda. Those were taken out after the CIA wrote its initial draft.
And then the CIA wrote another draft
Based on input from the State Department.
Well, but here's what I've been saying,
Do you
John.
deny that?
No, John. There was an interagency process, which is always the case because a lot of agencies have stakes. The whole effort here by Republicans to find some hidden mystery comes to nothing because the president called it an act of terror.
Joining us now, Republican Senator John McCain. Nice to have you here, Senator McCain. What do you make of the White House response?
Could I just pick up on what you just showed Mr. Carney say? The president didn't call it an act of terror. In fact, 2 weeks later, before the UN, he was talking about hateful videos and spontaneous demonstrations.
I think the White House would probably say there was the remark that it was a terror attack, although it did seem rather indirect.
What he did say the day after was he condemned acts of terrorism. But then that night, within, I think it was 60 Minutes, I'm not sure, interview, and then throughout the next 2 weeks, he kept saying that it was caused by a spontaneous demonstration sparked by a hateful video. He kept saying that over and over again and condemning that. Now, Martha, you've got to look at this in the context of the times there. They're in the midst of a presidential campaign. The narrative by the Obama campaign is that bin Laden is dead, al-Qaeda's on the run, not to worry about anything. And here comes this attack on Benghazi. And there are so many questions that are unanswered. We need a select committee. But for the president's spokesman to say that, well, there was only words or technical changes made in those emails is a flat-out untruth. I like Mr. Carney, but that's just not acceptable for the president's spokesman to say that to the American people when we now know any reference to acts of terror, any reference to al-Qaeda were removed from those talking points, and it was done at a deputies meeting just before Susan Rice went on television.
Would you call this a cover-up?
I'd call it a cover-up. I would call it a cover-up in the extent that there was willful removal of information which was obvious. It was obvious. Mr. Hicks said in his testimony, his jaw dropped when he saw Susan Rice do that. I was on another Sunday morning show after Susan Rice. My jaw dropped. I said, look, people don't bring rocket-propelled grenades and mortars to spontaneous demonstrations.
Let's talk about what's happened with Republicans this week, though, because of these emails. First of all, Ambassador Thomas Pickering, who I spoke to, who did the original review, said the idea of some sort of cover-up is absurd. But Congressman Stephen King, Republican from Iowa, said it was bigger than Watergate. And this is what Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe said.
People may be starting to use the I word before too long.
Okay, the I word meaning impeachment.
Yeah. of all of the great cover-ups in history, we're talking about the Pentagon Papers, the Iran-Contra, Watergate, and all the rest of them, this is going to go down as the most serious, most egregious cover-up in American history.
With all
Do you
due
agree with
respect,
that?
with all due respect, I think this is a serious issue. I will even give the president the benefit of the doubt on some of these things. We need a select committee. We need a select committee that would.
Do you blame Hillary Clinton?
I think that the Secretary of State has played a role in this.
Do you think she had a role in those emails?
She had to have been in the loop some way, but we don't know for sure. But I do know that her response before the Foreign Relations Committee, who cares? Remember when she said, well, who cares how this happened, in a rather emotional way? A lot of people care, I say, with respect to the Secretary of State.
So would you like to see her back on the Hill testifying
Oh, sure.
again?
We need a select committee that interviews everybody. I don't know what level of scandal, quote unquote, this rises to, but I know it rises to the level where it requires a full and complete ventilation of these facts. Now, here we are 9 months later, and we're still uncovering information which, frankly, contradicts the original line that the administration took. And so we need the select committee, and I hope we'll get it, and the American people deserve it. And
Just quickly, I want to go back to the testimony of Gregory Hicks, and he talked about bringing military assets in, bringing planes in. The military says that wasn't possible. Do you agree with the fact that it wasn't possible?
I find it impossible to comprehend why on September 11th, the day we all know is so important, when there have been numerous warnings about the security at that consulate, that we didn't have forces that were capable of doing so. And over a 7.5-hour period, with all the assets we have in the region, we couldn't have an F-16 at low altitude fly over those people who were attacking our consulate. And another question is, why weren't there forces capable of going to defend that consulate?
I want to move on to Syria. It's been more than a week since Israeli jets hit targets in Syria. More than 2 weeks since the U.S. said that there was evidence of the use of chemical weapons.